Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined by our analyst team, Zane Simon and Connor Rubish, to talk about, well, it's not the biggest MMA event of the year, but it might be the biggest MMA event of our lifetimes. Ken Shamrock versus Kimbo Slice, Bellator 138 plus UFC Fight Pass Berlin. Joanna Indicek, a.k.a. Joanna Champion, defending her women's strawweight title against Jessica Penn. Guys, what do you think about this conflagration, this meeting of competition? Scott Coker against Dana White, head-to-head, the best of MMA. Does it get any better?
It's a pretty solid weekend as far as I'm concerned. There's some really interesting matchups on the Bellator card. I like the fact that they're no longer constricted by the tournament format. Occasional tournaments are really fun, but I just like being able to see, the matchmaking. Scott Coker, whoever does matchmaking at Bellator, get to throw together fighters who match well together. And as far as matchmaking is concerned, I think there are a bunch of interesting style matchups on the UFC card as well. Some interesting prospects, and I'm always down to watch Ioane and Jacek fight, so I'm pretty pleased with it.
And you overlooked the elephant in the room. I know Zane Simon's been excited about Kimbo Slices versus Ken Shamrock. Probably can't sleep at night if he's like...
Shit, can't sleep at night, won't sleep at night. I've just been on 24-hour death watch for this,
Just rewatching those Kimbo Slice backyard fights and...
Yeah, I feel like I've got a complete technical handle on Kimbo's game now.
And there's a lot to learn, a lot to study there.
It took a lot of tape study to get that that knowledge.
Yeah, it's the way he takes the gold chain off before he starts throwing hands. That's, you got to be watching out for that kind of stuff.
Yes, indeed. And if he gets you close to the evaporation unit of an AC up against the wall of a house, you're in deep trouble. And watch out for the concrete retaining walls, too.
He's been punching a lot of refrigerators and stuff in preparation for this.
Could be. And then there's Ken Shamrock, of course, who... Now, people are going to be cynical about this, but I'm excited because this is a guy, if you really look at the career of Ken Shamrock, for all his achievements, UFC titles, the fight with Don Pride, his WWE accomplishments, the thing that Ken Shamrock really stands out for is his ability to fuck up a card. I mean, whether it's laying on top of Royce Gracie for 30 minutes at UFC 5, pulling out of the tournament at UFC 3 for no accountable reason, slap fighting with Dan Severn at UFC 9, pulling out of the original Kimbo Slice fight on Elite XC with stitches when he could have just superglued the thing shut and showed up and got his payday. This is a guy, I'm looking for Ken to dig deep and pull something unanticipated. I have no idea how he's going to screw this up, but I feel like it's not just going to be a case of hobbling into the cage and getting pasted, that Ken has something special for us. But enough cynicism and sarcasm. Let's dive in. We're going to do UFC Fight Night first because, frankly, it's an afternoon Fight Pass event from Berlin, despite the women's strawweight title being on the line. So it is the lesser of the two cards this weekend. Not that the Bellator 138 card is massive doings, but that's just reality. So we're going to run through the Fight Pass preliminary card first. 7 fights on the Fight Pass, and this starts in the mid-afternoon on Saturday for North American watchers. So, first up, we got bantamweights Taylor Lapilus and Ulka Sasaki. Make your picks, gentlemen. Connor first.
Is this one of the ones that we can talk about? Do we get to choose at will?
You get to choose at will. 3 fights.
I think this one's worth talking about. I think we've got 2 very interesting prospects here. Ulka Sasaki is a hell of a good grappler. But we really kind of saw the limitations of that in his last fight with Leandro Issa, where he kind of struggled to get Issa to the ground, wound up just getting his legs kicked apart. And for his part, Taylor Lapilus, he had a hell of a debut. Granted, it was against Rocky Lee, which is not exactly stiff competition, but he styled on Rocky Lee exactly as he should and really got to show off his crisp jab, his good footwork, his improving takedown defense, because that's the one thing Rocky Lee could have done to him, is to get him to the ground, and he really struggled with it. And then Lapilus also did a great job of, for a guy coming from, I believe, a French promotion that does not allow ground strikes, he showed really, really keen instincts for sneaking in elbows and stuff like that on the ground. Very similar to the elbows that Ioane and Jacek used to disincentivize those takedown attempts from Carla Esparza. So, a really interesting fight. If Sasaki can get it to the ground, it's especially interesting. He's obviously better grappler, but I kind of feel like Lapilus will take this one. I feel like he's young enough to be making those rapid improvements. I think he'll be able to outmaneuver Sasaki, and I am expecting to see his takedown defense continue to improve. And if it's as good as it was last time against a slightly better, because Sasaki is not an incredible takedown artist, so I'm going with Lapilus.
All right, and Zane, you have a pick?
I'm taking Sasaki. I think he's just a safer pick here. I mean, I really love what Lapilus did last time out, but I can't trust that his wrestling and grappling games are complete just because he beat up Rocky Lee. And Sasaki, even if he didn't, he has as many holes in his game as he has abilities, but the fact that he was able to submit Roland Delorme, who's a pretty good, decent grappler, and at least hang out with Leandro Issa for a round and a half, suggests to me that he's probably a little more ready, a little more experienced, and not so limited that I think Lapilus is just going to light him up the same way. But it's a great fight. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to watching who comes out of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the oddsmakers agree with Zane. They've got a Sasaki favorite at minus 256 all the way up to minus 310. Lapilus is the dog at plus 215 all the way up to plus 236. And we're getting our odds from OddsShark, SBN's official odds partner. Not that we encourage you to gamble. And that brings us to lightweights Peter Hallman and Magomed Mustafayev. Connor, you want to make a pick? Because I think Zane wants to talk about this one. So.
I will go with Hallman.
All right. And Zane, am I right? Do you want to talk about this one or not?
Yeah, I do. I got to talk about it because we ranked Mustafayev as one of our top welterweight prospects in the world, and here he is fighting at lightweight. So I'm really excited about it. I got to pick him for this. I think Hallman is the kind of fighter that is, he's a big, strong, well-rounded athlete, kind of a wall. He could easily be somebody that Mustafayev just struggles against and gets ground down against, but especially going down in weight. Like, Mustafayev has such an energetic, high output, like, crazy grappling wrestling style. He reminds me of, I think we could see something closer to, like, what we just saw Yair Rodriguez do against Charles Rosa. Like, maybe not quite the same.
Mid-air switch kick, bicycle wheel kick things.
Maybe not the same kicking game, but still, like, a lot of really exciting athletic activity that kind of overwhelms Hallman and keeps him off balance for the majority of the fight, and is just too dangerous on the ground for Hallman to hang out and try and grind on. And so I'm picking Mustafayev. I think he's a really exciting top flight prospect, and he's not coming in on short notice. So I expect him to be really well prepared.
For what it's worth, I agree with Mustafayev's promise. I'm not picking him, not picking against him because I don't think he's good. But I won't discuss it because I'm not allowed.
Hey, we got 2 cards to cover, so we got to be efficient here, boys. But the oddsmakers don't know what to make of this fight either. They've got Mustafayev at a range from plus 100 all the way to minus 115. Yet Hallman's more consistently favored. All his odds are in the negative column: minus 110, minus 105, all the way up to minus 130 on some odds. Hallman's probably more familiar with people. And that brings us to middleweight Scott Askham and Antonio Dos Santos. Got picks, fellas? Zane?
For Askham, I gotta go. This is tough. I gotta go with Askham. I think he's the more consistent fighter, so I'm picking him.
All right, and Connor?
Same here. Askham's kind of the safe pick here.
Yeah, and he is favored from minus 210 all the way up to minus 235. And Dos Santos Jr. is the underdog at plus 177 all the way up to plus 201. And that brings us to Nicholas Backstrom and Noah Lahat at featherweight. Got picks? Connor, go first.
I think this is one of the ones here worth discussing.
All right, have at.
I mean, this is basically like a guaranteed action fight, and also between two promising prospects. So, ooh, you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Keep talking.
Oh my gosh, I think I have my Sherdog page open and some video started playing in my ear.
I see.
That's horrible. Sherdog, change that. Nobody likes autoplay ads. Backstrom came in with all kinds of hype after submitting guy whose name I'm forgetting. Oh my God. Who did he submit? No, Tom Ninamaki. After grabbing that bulldog choke on Tom Ninamaki, he just, and that's really what he's best at. He's very, very crafty in the clinch with those knees and transitions on the ground. He's a very dangerous, almost of like the Sakuraba ilk, where he will just latch on to submissions before securing position, and it can leave him vulnerable sometimes, but it makes him really, really dangerous. And then he came into his last fight so overconfident in his ability to finish somebody. I mean, you could tell after he got knocked out while going for a ridiculously pointless marching front kick, like it was going to do nothing to his opponent, and he got knocked out, and then he was like angry about the fact that he got knocked out, like it was bullshit or something, like it's not supposed to happen to him, which kind of raises some red flags about where his mentality may be. Like he may feel like he's entitled to beat everybody in front of him. Maybe bought into his own hype a little bit. For his part, Noad Lahat is a pretty technical, well-rounded fighter. He's I wouldn't call him like an amazing striker, but he's got a good instinct for counterpunching. He fights well in the pocket. Obviously, he ran into a little trouble in his fight with Godofredo Pepe, but he was doing really well in that fight up until the point where he got knocked out with that flying knee. So. Boy, I wanted to talk about it because it's a good matchup, and because it's a good matchup, I don't know who to pick. I think I'll go with Backstrom because Lahat is not an incredible finisher. He's not a knockout puncher. Then again, neither was Mike Wilkinson, who knocked out Backstrom last time. But I have to assume Backstrom hopefully will have learned from his mistakes, will fight a little more conservatively on the feet, and will get to the ranges that actually favor his skill set. So I'm going to go with Backstrom.
All right, and Zane?
Yeah, I'm picking Backstrom. Lahat's at his best when he's able to engage and out-wrestle his opponents and out-grapple them, and I don't think he can out-wrestle and out-grapple Backstrom. I think that's really where Backstrom excels. If he just could turn this into a kickboxing match, he's got a good shot because Backstrom's just a kicker.
All right, and so Backstrom is favored minus 210 all the way up to minus 205 to minus 235, and Lahat is the underdog at plus 170 to plus 191, and that brings us to featherweights Arnold Allen and Alan Omer. Connor, you want to go first?
The War of the Allens. I'm going to go with Alan Omer here. All
right, and Zane, is this one you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll use the one on this. I got to go with. I don't know. This is a tough fight, just because Arnold Allen is like. There are people who think that he's the next best. He's the best young featherweight in the world. I'm not necessarily one of them, but I think there are good reasons for that. He's super young. He's, he's really like a physical specimen, and he's got the good basic fundamentals. Like apparently he's been working on his boxing. He was going to take some boxing matches while. Cage Warriors has been offline. That was his plan, was to go out and do some boxing, and so he's been working on his boxing a lot. He got the UFC call instead, but that hopefully might fast track one of the bigger areas of development he needs, which is that he's a decent technical striker, but he hasn't learned to sit down on his punches yet, and he's not comfortable in combination yet. And those are things that'll come in time, but if he's working more on it, that's great. Otherwise, he's a really grinding clinch fighter who's especially good in ground and pound. And Omer, he's a better boxer. He's got actual power in his hands, but he is also very willing to be put on his back and work from his back for submissions. And I could easily see him getting tied up in tight by Allen and outworked in the clinch and taken down and outworked on the ground and dropping rounds that way, even if he's able to have the more exciting moments on his feet. I don't know. I think I'm going to pick Allen. I think, honestly, Omer is one of those fighters who maybe the hype, maybe the sport has kind of passed by his hype. Like, he was a great rising talent 3 years ago, and then he got injured and had to spend a bunch of time on the sidelines, missed a tough cut, all sorts of stuff like that. And it just maybe, he kind of lost too much steam, and it's purely a momentum thing, but I'm picking Allen. I think he's maybe the fighter that is really the kid to watch right now,
All right,
even on super short notice.
And this very thin odds on this one. We've got Omer favored -195 to -210, and Arnold Allen is the underdog at +160 all the way up to +175. And that brings us to Alan Patrick and Mairbek Taisimov. And I bet you both want to talk about this one. So I think you've about used up all your cards. Who wants to go first? No? Okay, well, I'm just rushing you along. Connor?
I'll take it. As one of mine, I guess my last one. Mairbek Taisimov is a very, very fun fighter to watch, and he kind of stands out from the rest of the pack of Dagestani and Chechen fighters. He strikes you more as kind of someone, though he does have a Sambo background, he strikes you more as someone who partakes in Eastern Europe's other combat sport love, aside from wrestling, which is like karate and kudo and stuff like that. And so his style is very much like, he's a very skillful kicker. He throws really good straight punches. He's got nice movement on the feet. And then you add into that the fact that he is a combat sambo veteran as well, and it makes him a very dangerous fighter all around. Alon Patrick is not a guy to be overlooked, though. I mean, I think when I first watched his fight with John Makdessi, like I was so in love with the idea that Makdessi was going to outbox this big, slow Brazilian that I thought Makdessi won. And having rewatched it once or twice since then, I mean, Patrick outlanded Makdessi and did a really good job of finding his distance and landing his strikes and avoiding everything coming back at him. I mean, he showed a really natural instinct for striking despite not maybe having a technique as clean as Makdessi's. And so, I mean, it makes him a really interesting matchup for a guy like Taisimov. If I'm not mistaken, Patrick is going to have a reach advantage. I think he'll probably have a reach advantage in all of his fights because he's kind of freakishly long, and so it's interesting. He's got a style like Eric Silva's. If Eric Silva had better stamina and measured range better, you know what I mean? That's his striking, just kind of weird, dynamic, all over the place, out of nowhere, surprising striking style. So I have to go with Taisimov as just being the more well-rounded, more consistent fighter. But Patrick is undefeated. He looked very good against John Makdessi, who is a difficult fighter to look good against. And, he should definitely be he's a live dog here.
Why has he been out for so long?
I'm not sure.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Oh, he broke his jaw off in training. Like, there were pictures of his teeth ripped down.
Oh my God!
Nasty.
I forgot that was him. Yikes.
Yeah, it was nasty.
But that's also the kind of thing you can fix with some metal in your jaw, and it won't impact your mobility or.
Yeah. So. I'm actually excited to talk about this too. So yeah, this is honestly looking at the next three. I'd much rather talk about this fight than any of those.
Have at.
Yeah, this is I think Patrick's one of those guys that. It was easy to not understand just how tough and athletic he is, and that's really, I think, where he shines. Is that maybe he's not the cleanest striker, he's not a great grappler, like an exciting grappler, or even a great wrestler. I mean, Eric Silva, he's not as athletic as Eric Silva, so he's not going to have that same kind of shoot to top 5 competition and then lose, but still compete thing that Eric Silva does. But he's kind of like a lightweight Cathal Pendred in a much better way. Like, he's longer and rangier and works that better, especially from the outside. He's actually developed a consistent jab, which helps him a lot, and he's not so foot slow that he can't track people down. But he's still, he's big, he's tough, and he's going to stay on people and pressure them all fight. And that makes him an incredibly tough guy to beat. It's a great test for somebody like Taisimov, who I think Taisimov's a bit of a front runner, frankly. When he can get out ahead of somebody and punish them, then he's really hard to beat. I mean, he just dismantled Marcin Bandel and Anthony Christodoulou they had no chance against him whatsoever. But you put somebody like Michel Prazeres in there, who is also going to come aggressively after him and wrestle him and box him and be a tough out, and Taisimov drops rounds. So I think this is, this is a fight I think I'm going to pick Alan Patrick in. I think he's a reasonable underdog in that he will pressure Taisimov and stay on him, and I'm not yet convinced Taisimov stands well to pressure. So I like this fight a lot. I'm going to take a chance on Patrick and be undersold by Roger Huerta's next GSP, Mairbek Taisimov, who I think is a big front runner and is a great front runner when he has somebody who is scared to fight him, but I don't think Patrick's that guy.
All right, and so the odds makers have Taisimov favored at -160 all the way up to -185. Alan Patrick, the dog, but not by a huge margin, +135 to +153. And that brings us to the final fight on the Fight Pass prelims, although the whole card's on Fight Pass, so that's kind of an arbitrary distinction. Featherweights, Makwan Americani versus Mazio Fullen. Make your picks. Zane first.
Strong vote for Mr. Finland. He's going to stomp Mazio Fullen.
All right, and Connor?
It's a showcase fight for Americani, quite obviously, so you got to pick Mr. Finland here.
All right, and so Americani is favored at -219 to -260, and Fullen is the underdog at +175 all the way up to +206. That brings us to the main card, such as it is, starting with lightweight Nick Hein versus Lucas Sajewski. Connor, you can go first.
We're not making detailed picks on these either.
You've played your card.
I wasn't sure how far that extended.
For the next two, we're not. This one and the next one.
Well, then I will just say Peter Sabata.
No. Nick
We're
Hein.
talking about Hein versus.
Oh, Nick Hein. My God, I'm jumping ahead too far. Nick Hein, by virtue of being the better natural mixed martial artist.
All right, and Zane, you can go ahead and pick both of them since Connor already did.
Yeah, I'll take Nick Hein. I think he's just a better athlete. I'm troubled by how one-dimensional he is, but like I say, we're not picking in depth. Nick Hein, and then I'll take Peter Sabota, but I don't know. Like that's an ugly fight. So
yeah, should not be entertaining.
Well, that's why it's on the main card, I guess. Anyway, so Nick Hein is favored at +162 to -185, -159 to -185. Sajewski is the underdog at +135 to +150. Sabata is favored pretty heavily, -244 all the way up to -300. And Stephen Kennedy is the dog at +210 to +235. And that brings us to the co-main event, a fight that had it happen 4 or 5 years ago. Would have been pretty smoking hot. As it is, still pretty interesting. One of these guys I think is going to be heading down and out, and the other one is going to be clinging to relevance. Dennis Siver versus Tatsuya Kawajiri at featherweight. Who wants to go first? Zane.
I love this fight. I actually think this is the perfect time for this fight. Even if it would have been a better fight 5 years ago, maybe. Both these guys are at the same place in their career. They're both like barely top 15 talent that is rapidly on the outs. But they're both really capable of competing in their areas. Dennis Siver's turned himself into much more of a power wrestler with some, still some pop in his hands and his kicks.
His famous spinning back kick.
Yeah, and Kawajiri is a controlling wrestle grappler, a dominating wrestle grappler. Still not a very good boxer at all. I think that Dennis Siver's current reliance on his wrestling and takedown game is just going to play too much into what Kawajiri does well. I think Kawajiri is going to win this just on matchup. Like I think that it's not going to be a physical edge or a chin or who has more in the tank or anything like that. I just think the matchup really plays into Kawajiri. If Siver was willing to kickbox more, keep it standing, use his power, use his spinning back kicks, all that, he might have a better shot. But I think he's just so desperate to get the takedowns and get ground and pound. And we saw what that did to him against Charles Rosa. Like, Rosa was able... If that had been Siver at his peak, I don't think Rosa would have done as well as he did against him. And this Siver is... While he's a better wrestler than ever, he's not a controlling wrestler. He's not going to just get him down and hold him down. So I think Kawajiri takes it.
All right, and Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think that the Dennis Siver of old could have out out kickboxed Tatsuya Kawajiri, but I think he's missing a little bit of that speed and that footwork that he used to rely on. And while Kawajiri is technically speaking a pretty terrible boxer, he's certainly willing enough to throw down in the pocket until he can get to a clinch or initiate a takedown attempt. And he's had some success striking too, just because he's gritty and tough and refuses to quit. I think he's going to try to grapple Kawajiri. Like, I just think it's in his instincts now. It's been built into his new game. And it's not a good idea. I agree with the Charles Rosa thing, except that Kawajiri is not going to just accept guard like Rosa sometimes does. He's not going to accept those. He's going to gain top position and start to do work. And while Siver is a decent top player, he's got, like, from half guard, he can do some good damage with elbows and stuff. He can control decently well. He's just not, that's Kawajiri's thing. Like, that's what his entire career has been built on, his ability to just be that suffocating submission wrestler. So, I have to favor Kawajiri here as well.
All right, and it might be a betting opportunity because the oddsmakers like Siver, although not by a crazy margin. They've got him favored at -165, all the way up to -190. Kawajiri is the underdog at +135, all the way up to +155. And the one thing I'd say is, I think that Father Time is hitting Kawajiri harder than Dennis Siver. But the drug testing regime, Siver, of course, has failed tests in the past, and both of these guys are incredibly ripped individuals, so that's an X factor, although I don't think the European Commission is going to be, it's not like they're in Nevada or anything where the regime is especially threatening to be draconian. But anyway, a lot of X factors here.
The fact that Kawajiri was like huffing and puffing when he did manage to submit Sean Soriano is a little worrying.
Yeah, although that he explained as being a nerves thing, his octagon debut, etc.
Yeah, he did.
Etc. So perhaps that's the case. I don't know. I just feel like ever since Kawajiri got blasted by Gil Melendez, we haven't really seen the Kawajiri of old. So, but Father Time's creeping up on both these guys, so hard to say. But now that brings us to the main event, Women's Strawweight Championship. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Jessica Penn. Who wants this first? This is a fun fight.
I'll jump all over this. Why not?
Have at.
I love Joanna Jędrzejczyk's style, and I'm almost kind of
vicious and brutal style, isn't it?
She is very vicious, yeah, and I'm almost kind of lamenting the fact that she's probably going to be pressure fighting for some time, because most of the opponents that they have set to fight her are ones who basically need to get her to the ground and aren't that great in striking. And so she has kind of fallen into this pattern of stalking her opponents, sidestepping, keeping them in front of her, measuring them, using she has a really good knack for rhythm manipulation, where she will show them one timing and then break it with a feint and then hit them with something else. It's very difficult to time her punches coming, and that's part of what makes them so effective. Because I don't think she's like a tremendously hard hitter, but she places and times her shots really well, and so that makes her very dangerous. I'm just waiting for somebody like Alexa Grasso to come to the UFC and really be willing to stand with Jędrzejczyk, because like in the brief moments where Claudia Gadelha was striking with Jędrzejczyk, we really got to see how sharp she is as a counterpuncher, and when she gets to move around and use her footwork and box. It's in times when the opponent's actually managing to hit her and she's forced to adapt and start to use some of her defensive skills and punch through their combinations and find openings on the fly, that you really get to see the depth of her skill. So I guess that tone kind of suggests that I don't favor Penne here, and that's just the sad truth. I don't think Penne, like offensively, Penne is actually a pretty decent boxer. She's got a good jab. She will mix in leg kicks just to keep you guessing. She follows with a good right hand, and she throws a left hook, which, like, honestly, not many fighters in women's MMA or MMA in general have a decent left hook. And she's happy to trade left hooks with people. Her problem is that she just has no semblance of defense at all. Like, unless she moves her head when she's punching, and that's good, but she literally will just walk into, and we saw that in the Ronda Marcos fight, she will walk into the same right hand over and over and over again. She will throw a punch, and then a spinning back fist telegraphed from next week will come at her, and she will just wait for it to land or miss. She just doesn't react to things defensively. Maybe that's like a carryover of her instinct to just let people take her down so she can work her guard game, and so she maybe for some weird reason that's translated to letting them punch her, but it's not going to be a good run with Jędrzejczyk. And, like if Carla Esparza couldn't get Joanna Jędrzejczyk to the ground, I just think there's no way that Penne is going to put her on the canvas if she doesn't want to be there. I mean, not for anything more than a split second. And she's going to get beat up in the clinch while she's trying to make that attempt, too, because that's where she gets most of her takedowns. So it's just not a favorable match. I like Penne a lot. I think she's a really fun fighter. It's just a really unfavorable style matchup for her.
And your thoughts, Zane?
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking Penne, somebody who was a willing and a willing atom weight. So we're not talking about somebody who's like a huge powerhouse at 115 pounds. She's fine for that division. She's not short, she's not small, but she's not going to physically overwhelm Jędrzejczyk with her power the way Gadelha can. That's the thing with somebody like Claudia Gadelha is that she can match the physicality of Jędrzejczyk and even be a better athlete, be more powerful. Penne can't do that. And so, we're talking about somebody who has a decent head and arm throw and is a decent enough offensive wrestler for the division. But I think, too, it's her boxing defense is a function of being in a division where almost nobody strikes hard enough for it to matter. She's willing to eat the shots, because for a long time nobody was throwing anything that was going to hurt her, and that's just ingrained now. She doesn't worry about it, and she's going to have to worry about it a lot here. So I think Jędrzejczyk's just going to maul her.
My hope is that Penne comes forward so that we get to see Jędrzejczyk counterpunching her to pieces rather than stalking her.
I think Penne will. She seems like ingrained aggression.
I want to see some of those backstep right hands and stuff that we got to see, brief flashes of against Gadelha.
Yeah.
And I think you guys have made a good case for why the odds makers have Jędrzejczyk so heavily favored. She's out there at minus 675 on the low end, all the way up to minus 800 on the high end. And Jessica Penne is the underdog at plus 450, all the way up to plus 587. So those are some pretty considerable odds. And now,
any idea, what the prop bet is for Jędrzejczyk inside the distance?
Let's see.
Might be slightly better.
I will have to go to best fight odds for that one, and ooh, my God, Jędrzejczyk. Let's see. Any result other than Penne wins by TKO KO. Any other result is minus 5,525. So they don't think that Penne is going to knock her out. Let's see what the...
They're basically not offering a line on that.
Yeah, and Jędrzejczyk wins inside distance is only minus 160. So
yeah, that's where the value...
That is a tempting betting line right there because, like I said, Jędrzejczyk has not really been a tremendous finisher in her MMA career. But as her takedown defense improves and she spends less time being forced to grapple people, and as she learns to beat them up when they try to go for takedowns, like she did so well to Esparza, I think we're going to see her number of knockouts climb because she is far and away the best striker in that division in the UFC. And there are very few women not in the UFC who can really challenge her on that front.
Yeah.
All right, and that brings us... Do you have any general other bet picks before we move over to Bellator?
I think Lapalus is a decent bet at plus 215 if you can't resist the underdogs, but it's a very difficult fight to call. I think Kawajiri is definitely worth a little something at plus 135.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think Kawajiri is worth it. Other than that, was Patrick an underdog as well? I don't know about that. That's a close fight.
Patrick was an underdog, anywhere from up to plus 153.
I feel like that's such a pick'em fight, though.
It is such a pick'em fight. Yeah, most of these are just really coin toss fights. I don't see anything on the undercard that I would really... no, Amir Khani, bet on him. His line at, what was it, plus 200? That
Amir Khani was at minus 240.
Or minus 240?
Oh, yeah, that's a decent... That's almost certainly an early finish for him.
Yeah.
So that's one I think that should have more like minus
That's minus 500 to me.
Think that much. So, well, there you go. Those are our bargains. And now we turn to the Bellator 138 card, going to be live on Spike TV on Friday night, not Saturday. Still not quite sure why they switched it, because this is, to me, the definition of a tent-pole event with two of the biggest names in MMA history, if not necessarily two of the greatest fighters in UFC and MMA history. But let's start off. It's a pretty set card. We're going to skip the prelims, well, Zane, you had a couple on the prelims you wanted to mention.
That's what I want to talk
go
about.
Ahead in there.
But former UFC fighters, Chris Heatherly, Adam Sella, Justin Lawrence, all have spots on the prelims. Lawrence especially was somebody that was like really hyped coming off Tough, thought to be like an Anderson Silva prodigy, and he got to the UFC probably way too early and seems to have really turned things around since leaving the UFC. So he's somebody that I would be watching. I would be watching for, especially because he's got a showcase fight against a regional journeyman.
Yeah, and he's 3-0 since leaving the UFC, and is a pretty young guy. He's only 25 years old, so definitely one to keep an eye on still. And that brings us to the opening fight on the main card. Former lightweight champion Michael Chandler fighting Derek Campos. Who wants to go first? Connor, you're making a lot of eyebrow wiggling.
I'll take it. I'm always wiggling my eyebrows. It's how I pretend to be a human.
I see.
Humans wiggle their eyebrows a lot, right? This is an interesting fight. It's a more interesting fight than it would have been a couple years ago. Michael Chandler, yet another victim of that alliance problem that we've mentioned a couple times in the show, seems kind of lost in no man's land a lot now. With the striking, likes to hang his hands down and pot shot and use head movement and stuff, and that's cool. I was very excited when I first saw that his head movement was improving. I was like, oh, this is great, because he took a lot of shots in his first fight with Eddie Alvarez. If he could do what he did to Alvarez and not get hit so much, this guy's a killer. He's if he ever came to the UFC, he'd be a top 10. Kind of the same kind of hype that I had for Pat Curran a couple years ago, and we'll talk about him a little later too. Now, Michael Chandler just seems, how many times have we said it? Like Phil Davis, like Norman Park, like a guy who needs to be inside, needs to be in mid-range and in the pocket, and doesn't seem to know how to get there or even how to hang out there anymore. Against Eddie Alvarez, that was his thing. That was why he was so successful, because he was willing to stand and trade with Eddie Alvarez and showed surprisingly good instincts when it comes to combination punching, picking his shots, and then mixing in his takedowns from that range. Now he's just kind of telegraphing takedowns, not mixing them in with his shots, with his punches very well. Derek Campos kind of boxes the way that Michael Chandler used to. He's pretty tough, a high pressure style. He throws hard punches in combination. I really like how he attacks the body. That's my favorite thing about Campos' style, is that he really punches the body. I have to still pick Chandler because of the wrestling and the submission grappling, which has always been an ace up the sleeve for him. Even when Alvarez started to come back in their fight, that was what pulled it out in the end, was that rear naked choke. He's got a great rear naked choke, a really good, what Jimmy Smith always calls wrestler's jiu-jitsu. That's very well tailored to position before submission, and so Campos just can't stack up in terms of wrestling. But if Chandler decides to hang out on the feet with him, or if Campos shows a decent ability to read those telegraph takedowns coming in, it could be a very interesting fight.
All right, and Zane, your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think this to me is really smacks of being a Scott Coker. There we go. Specialty. This is very similar to the Kung Lee Scott Smith fight, in which Scott Coker has really excelled at finding guys like Derek Campos and turning them into premier action fighters for his cards. These are the guys where, Campos may not win this fight, but then they'll turn him around to match up against somebody like Esteban Payan, like they did, get him a big KO win, and then they'll bring him right back for another big fight against an established name. And he might even win a couple of those. These are the guys Scott Coker loves to find. They're athletic, they're brawlers, they go in and they're going to throw down and put on a good action fight. And they can compete with guys like Chandler, even though they might not necessarily be able to ever beat them with any consistency. So, I think this is what we really should hope for more out of Scott Coker matchmaking, or guys like Derek Campos getting a scene to shine on. And I don't think he beats Chandler just because of the wrestling and the well-roundedness and all that. But yeah, Chandler, I mean, I don't know. He does seem like he's stuck in no man's land. I'm trying to remember who was the Japanese fighter who was famous for his shift punching that just kind of bombed out of the UFC, fought Ronnie Yaya. Damn it. I'm finding through Yaya now.
Yeah, well, you can look for that. Chime up when you get that, but we got to move on because we only got a quarter an hour left and we got
Mizuto Hirota, was it? Maybe that's not who I'm thinking of. But I feel like
for a shift punch is a bit of an overstatement.
Well, somebody not her. Yeah, no, I think it was a guy who like constantly shifted his feet, like his stance as he threw. Like
you talking about the zombie dude?
Not Katsunori Kikuno.
Yeah, because that's I have no idea who you're talking about.
Anyway, like
our viewers can fill us in.
At one point, Chandler was kind of modeling. It felt like he was modeling a style like that early on, where he was just willing to kind of square his stance and punch with whatever hand was there. But more and more, it feels like he's just kind of trying to do that dart in and out,
like overthinking it,
and that puts him in danger, even against fights like this. So I'll pick Chandler, but this is a great fight to watch for Chandler to see exactly what the hell's going on with him.
Yeah, if he can turn it around after losing the title. Losing Alvarez and Will Brooks back to back. All right, and so Michael Chandler is heavily favored, -530, -500 all the way up to -575. Derek Campos is a dog at +375 up to +444. And that brings us to Daniel Straus and Henry Corrales at featherweight. And Zane, you can go first.
All right. This is a bounce back fight for Daniel Straus. Corrales is a good athlete, a strong dude, but he seems like a fighter who is just trying to muscle and outmuscle every opponent and outmuscle every technique in the ring. Like, he'll just pick dudes up and slam them. He's throwing big one-off power strikes without really setting them up. And his athleticism and his power was enough to get him wins on the King of the Cage circuit. But Straus has, like, really evolved a lot lately. And now he's the kind of fighter who is counter-punching really well. He's got, he's really taking advantage of his speed and athleticism in the pocket to return strikes and to land and dart in and land big shots. He's still a great wrestler. I don't think Corrales is going to be ready for that kind of step up at all.
And Connor?
Yeah, I've got to basically agree on every front. Daniel Straus Daniel Straus is weird because he has these bizarre mental lapses, and he doesn't tend to fight out of tough spots that well. That happened both in his fight with Pat Curran, that last fight with Patricio Pitbull, where he was just like out striking Pitbull. He was doing a beautiful job of beating him on the feet, and started to get a little too rough for him. And it was almost like he was just waiting for Pitbull to lock in the submission that he tapped to. Like, he was just hoping it would come at some point. And not to discredit him or like talk smack about him, but it just seems like sometimes he looks for a way out when it really, really matters that he toughen out and look for the win. Henry Corrales is another great example of that archetype that Zane was talking about before. Like, this is a guy who will probably have a long career in Bellator because Scott Coker is going to match him against like local journeyman and let him just knock their blocks off. And he could actually turn into a decent fighter with a little more experience and with some tough fights like this. Like, this one could be an eye-opener for him. Straus being a guy who can counterpunch him, convince him not to just rely on his chin, who can't be easily outmuscled. Corrales has some good aspects to his game. He hits hard. He's got decent clinch skills. He's a great combination puncher in terms of like attacking the body. Though he does like lead with power shots, like Zane said a lot. Daniel Straus should win by virtue of wrestling and counterpunching and the kicking advantage and basically whatever he wants. But it should be fun while it lasts.
And you're picking Straus, who is quite heavily favored, -400 all the way up to -450. Corrales is the dog at +255 to +363. And that brings us to the match that the real connoisseurs are slavering over, heavyweights Bobby Lashley and Dan Charles. Oh, my God. Bobby Lashley. Zane?
All right.
We don't have to do in depth on this one because it's a shit show. But go ahead.
It is, but I actually interviewed Bobby Lashley not that long ago, so
An intelligent, well-spoken guy.
Yeah, he definitely has his heart. He's got his head on his shoulders. No doubt about it. And it's a walkover for Lashley. Charles has the classic puncher's chance in that he's a very willing brawler. Like, he's not a tentative striker. He will go out there and basically just do that, like, arms out, twist his torso kind of striking and blitz guys. So he could certainly hurt Lashley, but, Lashley, I actually think Lashley's game has been clicking a lot lately, at least to the extent that it can. He seems a lot more fluid out there, a lot more like he knows what he's doing, a lot more like everything's kind of coming together, and he's not getting hurt anymore in fights. He's just going in, landing a big power shot, getting into the clinch, muscling the guy around, throwing him to the ground, and then working him over on the ground. So this seems like another classic case of that for Lashley.
All right, Connor, you see anything else to comment on?
It should be Lashley doing his thing against the kind of guy that Lashley beats.
All right, and that's what the odds makers have Lashley favored at minus 531, minus 500, all the way up to minus 600. Dan Charles is the dog at plus 385 to plus 425. That brings us to Daniel Weichel and Patricio Pitbull Freire for the featherweight title. Pitbull being the champion. Who wants this one first? Zane?
I'll let Connor take it.
Right. Is anybody else hearing an echo, or is it just me?
Yeah, I'm getting a vicious echo. We should mute when we're not talking.
Okay, I'll try and do that. Boy, I love Patricio Pitbull. Like, I love Patricio Freire's style. I think he is a fantastically skilled kickboxer. He's turning into a much better counterpuncher as well. It's kind of been his bread and butter lately, and because of that, I think is why he had so much difficulty with Daniel Straus, who was electing to counterpunch him and forcing Pitbull to lead. And he used to brawl a lot, but now I think he's less comfortable being the first one to go, which makes sense. He's got short arms, he's got that kind of infighter style. And even when he likes to pressure, he likes to kind of walk a guy down and wait for that opportunity. And Weichel's kind of the same way. He's kind of an aggressive counterpuncher in style on the feet. But because he's going to be coming forward, which he tends to do, I think he's going to be giving Pitbull a lot of opportunities to get off those big shots. And the one thing that Pitbull has really, really excelled at doing lately over, for example, his brother Patricky is learning to throw combinations, and the left hook with which he finishes his combinations is really, really dangerous. It's one of the best left hooks in MMA right now. So, yeah, it's is it? How do I pronounce his name? Is it Weichel?
I call him Weichel, but I'm always wrong.
Oh, yeah, Weichel.
I
think.
Yeah. I'll take Zane's word for it. Maybe it's Weichel. Like, is it a very German name?
Yeah, it's super German.
Weichel, like a couple of years ago, a guy, like 1 year ago even, him coming off of a win over Pat Curran would have said a lot. But Pat Curran is just like one of the most bizarre head cases in MMA right now, where it's just like he'll just spend long stretches in a fight just doing nothing and like throwing no volume, making no clear attempts to get himself into the fight. For a guy who was once known as like a fantastic finisher and a really great volume technical boxer, it's very, very strange. And so Weichel looked pretty solid in that fight, but I don't think it's enough to really. I don't think it really gives us an idea of how he's going to perform against Freire, who is very much now at the top of his game, coming off his own very impressive win over Curran, and it was much more definitive than Weichel's. So not to just fall back on MMA math, but I've got to go with Pitbull here.
All right, and Zane.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I picked Weichel to beat Curran. I thought that just because Curran is such a head case and because Weichel seems he's on such a tear lately, but really what you have is you have two guys who have gotten to the point where they are able to fight deep into fights against top competition and win. And that makes it really hard to predict exactly where this fight is going to go. These are guys who, for Freire, he's beating Daniel Straus in the 4th round. He's beating Pat Curran over a 5-round decision, and Fabricio Costa da Silva or Fabricio Guerrero in a 5-round decision, in a 3-round decision. Like, he's going late and winning, and Vichel's doing the same thing. So both guys have the tools, but yeah, I think Fred just seems like he's on. I don't know. I think his game is just a little more dangerous. Like, Vichel is a solid boxer. Really, he's at his best as a submission artist, and I don't think he's just gonna I don't think he's gonna outwork Frey on the ground. I don't think he's gonna get him down and submit him and outwork him there, even if he's very good at it.
That's one of the most overlooked aspects of Pitbull's style. Like, the dude is he is almost impossible to take down. He's very, very explosive takedown defense. He's quite a good wrestler himself when he wants to get it to the ground. Like, offensively and defensively, he looks a lot like Jose Aldo in his wrestling. Got great overhooks. Really, he hits that whizzer really hard and will get his hips out and force the single leg and then just limp leg his way out of it. And then on the ground, he's got a rock solid base. His frame makes him really, really difficult to out grapple because he's just so small and stocky. So I don't see that will be Vichel's best path to victory. Not being as you said, not as dangerous. He doesn't have as much venom as Pitbull on the feet.
Yeah.
And man, if your best hope is to out grapple Pitbull, it's not really a good one.
Not a very good hope. But the fact that this is such an intriguing fight, I think, talks a lot about Coker's game here. He's got the freak show fight at the top of the card, but he has consistently delivered a really quality co-main event when he brings the freak show. And so hopefully he'll get some eyes on this fight and people will pay attention to Pitbull and Vichel. Pitbull is favored -270 all the way up to -300, and Vichel is the underdog at +200 up to +252, and that brings us to the epic freak show of freak shows. 51-year-old Ken Shamrock, once the world's most dangerous man, now no longer, against Kimbo Slice, best known for fighting in backyards, and once guillotined boxer Ray Mercer and busted who's James Thompson's cauliflower ear wide open. So who wants to talk about this fiasco first, if it's even possible to analyze, or is it worth analyzing in any serious way?
Can we just talk about Kimbo Slice versus Seth Petruzelli for the next 10 minutes?
For the next 15 seconds, because that's as long as the fight lasted.
I mean, what happened? Was it was it like a front kick, poke to the chin, or it was a punch from one leg? That
it was a very off-balance lead hand straight punch, if I recall. And Kimbo just seemed to be so terrified that he just fell, and then Petruzelli finished him. I mean, it was
weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. I mean, Kimbo was a guy whose fight career had been extremely, extremely carefully managed up to that point, and really, they obviously, in retrospect, it's easy to say they should have canceled the fight rather than put him in there against an unknown quantity, or let him fight Frank Shamrock. Even that would have been pretty risky. An undersized, aged, bad knee Frank Shamrock, I'm sure, would have had something up his sleeve for Kimbo. But
I think Frank Shamrock would have beaten him, to be really honest.
Yeah, I think so too. But still, that at least Frank Shamrock is a star. No, I know, but I'm talking about Frank offered to fight the night.
Oh, Frank offered to fight him. Okay.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, that's good back info for people who were not following the blow-by-blow of 2007's biggest fight fiasco closely. So sorry, get lost in my whole. I'm a huge Frank Shamrock fan, but Seth Petruzelli is a guy with no marquee value, even after beating Kimbo Slice. So you should never have let him in the cage with a guy that all he could do was diminish. But now we've got Ken Shamrock, a guy who. I mean, at one time, one of the legends of the sport. He's in the UFC Hall of Fame. I think he's earned it. He showed the limitations of Royce Gracie's style at a point when that was an enigma to people, although he didn't figure out a way to beat him, although in modern decision times he would have. But then mostly has found ways to screw up amazingly and blow cards. So I don't know. This speaks to the business desperation of Scott Coker and the way the UFC has horked up all the marquee names. I mean, people like CM Punk that they're paying just to sit on the shelf, because CM Punk could be on this card fighting a freak show fight that would be far more interesting. Anyway, anybody else who wants to talk about this? Come on.
I think the key detail here is what you said about how carefully managed Kimbo Slice's career was. and that basically being the reason for any of the success that he had in MMA. Let's be honest. Like Kimbo Slice is not a mixed martial artist.
No, he's and he's barely a boxer. I mean, he's a tough man contest boxer.
Exactly. Like, he's got heavy hands. He's got as a street fighter, like Kimbo Slice would destroy 95% of the Earth's population in a street fight. He's very, very capable in that realm. Obviously, he knows what he's doing. He's a very good natural fighter. But at his age, and obviously, I could talk about Ken Shamrock's age too. But like Ken Shamrock is a mixed martial artist. That is one thing that you can say. Ken Shamrock knows how to throw kicks. He throws in. But he knows how to throw. He had a
fairly striking game, but yeah.
Of course, I'm just saying, like Ken Shamrock will go out there and fight like a mixed martial artist. Kimbo Slice will not. I don't know. Like I'm gonna make a horrible mistake here and pick Ken Shamrock to win. Like I just don't. No, I honestly just don't. I've never ever been impressed with Kimbo Slice as a mixed martial artist. I have just only ever seen like.
Yep, and we lost Connor, but
that's good. He was about to say some ridiculous shit.
Well, the thing is, stylistically, if they were both 41 years old, I would pick Ken Shamrock too. But
my point of view was so offensive that Google booted me.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were just about to say, stylistically, if it was an even playing field, if 51 was 41, then yeah, but 51 is 51, man, and that is old to be in the cage.
I'm picking Ken Shamrock for two reasons. I think he actually knows what he's doing in an MMA bout, and I really don't think that Kimbo Slice ever has. I don't. I think he's only ever.
Yeah, sense the guillotine Ray Mercer, which more than UFC champ Tim Sylvia could pull off.
I guess that's fair. Also, the second reason is it would be way more hilarious if Ken Shamrock won than Kimbo Slice.
Okay.
And we're really not watching this fight because it's competitive mixed martial arts. We're watching this fight because it is hilarious. So
it's a farcical freak show. But I think Ken is going to pull something off before he even gets in the cage. Mark my words. So? I think Ken is going to fuck this up spectacularly, and I'm
that would be hilarious too.
What he has up his sleeve. Zane, what do you think?
Oh God, I don't know. I think that betting on a 51-year-old man to win an MMA fight against somebody who is like at all aware of how fighting works is kind of a long shot.
And just as big and strong, even bigger and stronger.
There's nothing, no amount of knowing how MMA works or or being in shape is gonna fix Ken Shamrock's knees.
No.
And without knees, the dude is basically just a boxer too.
And not a very good one. A one-punch boxer.
Yeah. I mean, he's a much lesser boxer than Kimbo Slice. And that's a hard truth.
And even at his best, Shamrock's grappling game was not takedown based. I mean, he was a submission grappler, but a pretty piss poor wrestler. Not piss poor, but not a great wrestler.
Well, and I mean, ever since he left the sport in 1996, he's basically said he ruined his knees pro wrestling. And since then, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins in his career since 1996.
And let's not forget the time he was so doped up against Don Fry that he let him break his ankle. Although I think he broke both of Fry's ankles and neither man tapped. So those halcyon days.
Yeah, he fought 10 times since then. He has 5 wins. He's not getting younger. The parts of his body are not regenerating. He still stands with his chin straight in the air and wings big shots. And we don't even know. Neither of these guys have fought in MMA for 5 years.
Yeah.
So
the dust is going to be flying off these cats.
Yeah, I'm going to pick... you know what? I'm going to hope that Ken Shamrock wins. Hope to God he wins. But I am going to pick this to end short and sad.
Do you want to know what my prediction is? I think Ken Shamrock outlasts Kimbo Slice to a decision. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a horrible, boring decision where Kimbo Slice is exhausted after one round, and Ken Shamrock just hits him with pity pat inside low kicks for the next 10 minutes.
It's either going to be that, or it's going to be that we're all wondering if Ken Shamrock is dead.
That's a distinct possibility.
Yeah.
Those are the two possibilities. I'll take dead. You can take decision.
Okay. That is brutal. And the odds makers are trying to make sense of this. They've got Kimbo heavily favored at -260 to -300, and Ken is the underdog +195 to +220, 240. So
they should just put question marks for the odds.
Who
And
would
like,
take money on this? Who would bet money on this fight? I mean,
you bet and you get to see what the odds are after you bet. Like, you don't odds there, but they just like put question marks and like, if you bet on this, you don't get to see the odds.
I was torn between saying that any odds would make sense to me for this fight and that no odds could possibly make sense to me for this fight.
there's just too many unknowns. These guys have not been in the cage in so long, and what happens to the human body in its 50s is not pretty, especially in this kind of athletic contest, head-to-head. But anyway, that's our show. That's the weekend. Zane will be back with the 6th round after the fight, and then Eugene will have Knuckle Up on Monday. And then we'll be back next week to preview another UFC. I don't even remember. Oh, it's the Tough Brazil 4 finale. Is that right? Machida versus
the Tough Brazil 4 finale without Tough Brazil 4 because of visa issues.
Yes, because the U.S. State Department apparently is offline and can't approve visas. So they should have kept this card in Brazil. Somebody's kicking themselves.
Oh, they didn't even have it in Brazil originally. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas, where they actually filmed the show. And then they moved it to Florida, where they filmed Tough 21, and filmed Tough 21 from Florida, where they filmed it, to Vegas.
They screwed over our man Josh Saman in the process, because he asked to be on that Florida card specifically, because he's from Tallahassee, and then they're like, we're moving you to Vegas.
Oh, well.
Good on the UFC.
Yeah. Anyway, so that ought to be fun and interesting. So stay tuned for all that goodness. And give us a like on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Connor, do you know the iTunes address per chance? It's MMA Nation on iTunes. It's in the post.
I'm going to find it out now.
By the way, then, while Connor's looking that up, it was Michihiro Omagawa. That was who I was thinking of.
I remember him. Now, he was a fun fighter.
And he was a shift-punching boxer. Like,
that was a late development in his career, but yeah, he did start doing that, and it didn't do him any favors.
No, it didn't do him any favors. But I do think that with somebody as athletic as Michael Chandler, that was a more functional base for Chandler to style himself off of.
Quite possibly.
The address is too weird to easily read. Just go to the iTunes store and search for MMA Nation. It's the first result, I believe.
All right. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes. That's all I had to say. I don't know why I complicated it. Follow us on Twitter, @TheZaneSimon, @BoxingBush, BUSCH, and I'm @KidNate. Read us on BloodyElbow.com and follow us at BloodyElbow.com on Twitter. And that's our show. So adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks very much.